The story begins at the Chen family residence, where the elders anxiously await the return of their grandson, Chen Zhuo. He is the rightful heir to the Chen family and is expected to take over as the new head. However, if Chen Zhuo remains missing for the next 3 months, the position will fall to his highly ambitious older brother, Chen Yu, who is eager to claim the role. Meanwhile, in another part of the city, Chen Zhuo is living under a disguise, working as a security guard at a hotel. He has a purpose. He firmly believes that the hotel's owner possesses crucial evidence and testimony about the tragic past of his mother. Only after uncovering the truth behind her murder will he be ready to reclaim his rightful place as the head of the Chen family. The hotel is owned by Mei Ying, a strong and independent woman. One day, she is nearly robbed by 2 men, but Chen Zhuo steps in just in time to save her. However, he notices that the item she is holding is a counterfeit. Shocked by this revelation, Mei Ying insists on verifying the claim, and together, they visit an expert who had previously authenticated the artifact. Despite his appearance as a mere security guard, Chen Zhuo demonstrates an extraordinary knowledge of rare antiques, surpassing even the so-called expert. Thanks to him, Mei Ying avoids being deceived by the fraudulent item. That evening, Mei Ying is approached by Jian Qi, a wealthy and influential businessman who has long pursued her affection but has always been met with rejection. Desperate to distance herself from him, Mei Ying boldly pretends to be in a relationship with Chen Zhuo and even kisses him in front of Jian Qi to make the act more convincing. Later, in her office, Mei Ying explains her situation to Chen Zhuo and proposes a temporary contract marriage. In exchange for playing the role of her husband in public, he would receive a generous payment. Chen Zhuo accepts the deal, but instead of keeping the money for himself, he gives it to an elderly fellow security guard named Guang Huan, who is struggling to make ends meet. Touched by Chen Zhuo's kindness, Guang Huan gives him a bracelet, which, despite its simple appearance, seems to hold a deeper significance. Meanwhile, news of Chen Zhuo's whereabouts reaches Chen Yu, who immediately begins plotting to ensure his younger brother never returns to claim his inheritance. Back at Mei Ying's home, her mother is furious upon learning of her decision to choose Chen Zhuo, a mere security guard, over the wealthy Jian Qi. Determined to prove her wrong, Jian Qi arranges a meeting between Mei Ying, her mother, and Zhang Zi, the manager of the prestigious Jiangnan Group. Hoping to secure an investment for her hotel, Mei Ying is pressured into drinking despite her low alcohol tolerance. Seizing the opportunity, Jian Qi, with the help of Mei Ying's mother, attempts to take advantage of her compromised state, hoping to force her into marriage. Fortunately, before anything regrettable occurs, Chen Zhuo arrives in his security uniform and swiftly intervenes, driving Jian Qi away. The next day, at Mei Ying's hotel restaurant, a group of individuals suddenly claims to be suffering from food poisoning. It is yet another one of Jian Qi's schemes, meant to ruin Mei Ying and exact revenge on Chen Zhuo. However, Chen Zhuo arrives just in time to expose the deception. Unexpectedly, one of the conspirators recognizes Chen Zhuo as his elder brother. His name is Mingyu, and upon realizing who Chen Zhuo is, he immediately apologizes and calls off the staged incident. From that moment on, Mingyu pledges his loyalty to Chen Zhuo and decides to work for him. Meanwhile, Zhang Zi, who is present for a site inspection at the hotel, catches sight of the bracelet Chen Zhuo received from Guang Huan. His eyes widen in shock, as if he recognizes the bracelet and its hidden history. That night, in their shared bedroom, Chen Zhuo was not allowed to sleep in the same bed as Mei Ying, so he settled on the floor instead. Mei Ying remained uncertain about who Chen Zhuo truly was, this man who was merely her contract husband. However, Chen Zhuo was not just staying at her house for shelter. He was also investigating whether Mei Ying had any evidence regarding his mother's death a year ago. The next day, it was announced that the Jiangnan Group would be hosting a grand banquet, inviting prominent business figures to attend. Initially, Jian Qi intended to personally deliver an invitation to Mei Ying, but before he could, an invitation for Mei Ying, Chen Zhuo and her parents arrived, making his efforts unnecessary. At the banquet, a commotion broke out when Chen Zhuo was accused of stealing a watch. However, he quickly turned the situation around, exposing Jianqi as the real culprit instead. During the event, the sole heir of the Jiangnan group, Huang Yuhuan, made an appearance. Although Chen Zhuo did not recognize her, she seemed to know him. At the same time, Mei Ying, who had begun to develop feelings for Chen Zhuo, felt a pang of jealousy. As the evening reached its peak, an auction of rare and luxurious items commenced. Unexpectedly, Chen Zhuo cleverly baited Jianqi into bidding excessively on an item, causing him to fall into a financial trap. However, for the final auction piece, a diamond crown, Chen Zhuo placed an incredibly high bid of 1 million yuan. Hearing this, the crowd immediately laughed, assuming that a mere security guard could never afford such a sum. But to everyone's surprise, Guang Huan suddenly intervened, declaring that the item would be given to Chen Zhuo for free. It was then revealed that Guang Huan was actually the leader of the Jiangnan group, who had been masquerading as a security guard to secretly assess candidates for the company's future leadership. Guang Huan then offered the leadership of the Jiangnan group to Chen Zhuo, but he refused. Even Yu Huan tried to persuade him to take over the position and marry her, but Chen Zhuo rejected her as well. His heart belonged only to Mei Ying. Furthermore, Guang Huan had also discovered that the death of Chen Zhuo's mother had been suspicious. He had already assigned people to gather evidence to help Chen Zhuo uncover the truth behind her passing a year ago. Back at Mei Ying's house, Chen Zhuo continued his secret investigation but was nearly caught by Mei Ying. Fortunately, he managed to cover up his actions before she grew suspicious. In the end, Chen Zhuo soon realized that his contract wife had no recollection of the event from a year ago that were connected to his mother's death. Not long after, a sudden storm caused a power outage in the house. Mei Ying, who had a deep-seated fear of severe weather, was visibly shaken. Sensing her distress, Chen Zhuo quickly comforted her, drawing them closer together and planting the seeds of love between them. The next day, Mingyu was kidnapped and beaten by Jianqi. Soon after, Jianqi sent a message to Chen Zhuo, demanding that he come. Without hesitation, Chen Zhuo rushed to save Mingyu, whom he had come to regard as a younger brother, much like Yuan. At that moment, Chen Zhuo fought off all of Jianqi's men with ease and successfully rescued Mingyu. The next day, at Jiangnan Group, Guang Huan had finally obtained proof of who was responsible for Chen Zhuo's mother's murder a year ago. He urgently summoned Chen Zhuo to his office, but by the time Chen Zhuo arrived, Guang Huan was already on the brink of death after consuming a drug that drained his strength. With his last breath, Guang Huan entrusted his granddaughter, Yu Huan, to Chen Zhuo, asking him to take care of her. Several days later, after scattering Guang Huan's ashes by the beach, Chen Zhuo realized that his death was no accident. It was likely orchestrated by the same person who had murdered his mother. Later, Chen Zhuo confided in Mei Ying, revealing that his mother had fallen from a cliff a year ago, and at that time, Mei Ying had been present at the scene, though she had no memory of it. While driving, their car nearly collided with another vehicle, and as Chen Zhuo swerved to avoid the crash, Mei Ying's head struck the window. At the hospital, Mei Ying suddenly recalled that she had been filming a vlog at the time of the incident. In her memory, she saw Chen Zhuo's mother being pushed by someone who looked strikingly similar to Chen Zhuo. The only difference was that the perpetrator was wearing glasses. After recovering this memory, Mei Ying was shaken and decided to end their contract marriage, demanding that Chen Zhuo stay away from her. She feared that he might be the one responsible for his mother's death. However, Chen Zhuo refused to leave until she gave him a proper explanation. In truth, Mei Ying was conflicted. Part of her did not want to be apart from Chen Zhuo, and she kept questioning whether her recollection was accurate. Meanwhile, chaos erupted at Mei Ying's hotel when employees demanded their overdue salaries. Without an investor, particularly after the loss of Guang Huan from Jiangnan Group, Mei Ying had been struggling to manage the hotel's finances. Fortunately, the situation was de-escalated, and employees were reassured that their salaries would be paid soon. Yu Huan, aware of Mei Ying's troubles, offered to invest in the hotel on the condition that Mei Ying hand over Chen Zhuo to her. However, Chen Zhuo firmly rejected the offer, as he only saw Yu Huan as a sister. The following day, in an attempt to get closer to Chen Zhuo, Yu Huan moved into Mei Ying's house. Mei Ying's mother had no choice but to accept the situation, as Yu Huan was now the head of Jiangnan Group, holding immense influence over the city. Likewise, Chen Zhuo and Mei Ying had no option but to tolerate her presence, fearing that upsetting Yu Huan could lead to repercussions for the hotel. That same night, Yu Huan boldly requested that Chen Zhuo share a bed with her. Unwilling to allow this, Mei Ying also got into the bed, placing herself between them to prevent any closeness between Chen Zhuo and Yu Huan. Early the next morning, they resumed their usual routines. At work, Yu Huan publicly proposed to Chen Zhuo, asking him to be her partner. However, in front of a large crowd, Chen Zhuo firmly declined, unwilling to betray his feelings for Mei Ying. He made it clear that he did not love Yu Huan, and no amount of persuasion could change that. Meanwhile, Chen Zhuo's ambitious older brother, Chen Yu, took advantage of the growing resentment towards Chen Zhuo. He orchestrated a scandal at Mei Ying's hotel by rallying a group of people to publicly accuse her of being a mistress. Fortunately, Chen Zhuo intervened just in time, dispersing the instigators before the situation spiraled out of control. It was soon revealed that this entire scheme had been devised by Jian Shi in collaboration with Yu Huan. Apparently, Yu Huan, blinded by her desire for Chen Zhuo, had been willing to go to extreme lengths to separate him from Mei Ying. However, she failed to realize the gravity of her actions. By working with Jian Shi, she was unknowingly aiding Chen Yu, the very person who was both Chen Zhuo's enemy and a serious threat to them all. Unexpectedly, Chen Zhuo was already aware that his whereabouts had been discovered by his older brother, Chen Yu. Realizing this, Mei Ying decided to terminate their contract marriage. Although it was difficult, Chen Zhuo agreed to her decision, not wanting Mei Ying to become further entangled in his family affairs. Pretending to be heartbroken, Chen Zhuo feigned drunkenness over their separation. However, Yu Huan took advantage of the situation to get closer to him. Before the reporters sent by Yu Huan could arrive, Chen Zhuo rendered her unconscious. When the reporters arrived, they found Chen Zhuo with Mei Ying instead. In front of them, Chen Zhuo declared that the woman he truly loved was Mei Ying, not Yu Huan. As a result, Chen Zhuo and Mei Ying, who had previously parted ways, were now reunited, not because of their contract marriage, but out of genuine love for one another. Not only that, Chen Zhuo also warned Yu Huan never to resort to such schemes again, emphasizing that he only saw her as a younger sister, entrusted to him by her grandfather, Guang Huan. Because of Yu Huan's failure to win Chen Zhuo over, Mei Ying was unable to secure investment from the Jiangnan Group, leaving her no choice but to mortgage her house to pay her employees' wages. This enraged her parents, especially her mother. Fortunately, Chen Zhuo arrived with the house's deed, which Mei Ying had mortgaged. He had redeemed it with his own money, revealing that he was far wealthier than he had let on. In truth, Chen Zhuo was the young master of the Chen family, the richest family in the country. This revelation drew Mei Ying closer to him, though she became increasingly curious about his mysterious background. Suddenly, Chen Zhuo received a call from Jian Shi, informing him that Yu Huan had been kidnapped. If he wanted to save her, he had to come immediately. Without hesitation, Chen Zhuo rushed to her rescue, fearing for her safety. However, upon arriving, he was ambushed and tied up. Jian Shi then demanded that Yu Huan transfer all her shares in the Jiangnan Group to him, allowing him to take control of the company. Willing to sacrifice for Chen Zhuo, Yu Huan signed the transfer papers, giving up her inheritance. After Jian Shi left, and Chen Zhuo managed to free himself, he realized that the entire ordeal had been an act orchestrated by Jian Shi and Yu Huan to manipulate his emotions and force him to be with her. Despite this, Chen Zhuo had already seen through their scheme. The next day, Yu Huan was shocked to discover that Jian Shi, whom she had conspired with, had now turned against her. He had ensured that the contract transferring the Jiangnan Group's shares was legally binding, effectively forcing Yu Huan out of the company and making himself the new leader. That night, as Mei Ying and Chen Zhuo were enjoying a quiet evening together, Yu Huan suddenly arrived in tears. She confessed that her own greed had led to her downfall and that she had been deceived by Jianqi. Without hesitation, Chen Zhuo and Mei Ying promised to help her reclaim what was rightfully hers. Grateful for their kindness, Yu Huan vowed to invest in Mei Ying's hotel once she regained control of the Jiangnan Group. Determined to restore justice, Chen Zhuo confronted Jianqi and used a legally binding will left by Guang Huan to overturn Jianqi's fraudulent claim. With this undeniable proof, Yu Huan successfully reclaimed her position as the rightful heir of the Jiangnan Group. Upon returning home, Mei Ying's mother prepared a bowl of soup for Chen Zhuo, which he drank without suspicion. However, as he prepared for bed, he suddenly felt an unusual dizziness, as though he were intoxicated. Realization struck there had been something in the soup. It was an aphrodisiac. Overcome by its effects, Chen Zhuo and Mei Ying shared an intimate moment. However, despite the intense emotions between them, Chen Zhuo chose to restrain himself, honoring their bond until they were officially married. The next day, while working as a security guard as usual, Chen Zhuo suddenly lost consciousness after drinking something that had been tampered with. It turned out to be the doing of Jianqi, who still held a grudge against him. At the command of Chen Yu, Jianqi had secretly laced Chen Zhuo's drink with a blinding drug. However, upon seeing Chen Yu's face, Jianqi was shocked. It bore an uncanny resemblance to Chen Zhuo. Later, as Chen Zhuo returned with Mei Ying, a sudden ambush occurred. Mei Ying was kidnapped by Jianqi, who intended to take advantage of her. Fortunately, Chen Zhuo arrived just in time to rescue her, revealing that he had only pretended to be blind. After learning that the mastermind behind the attack was his own brother, Chen Zhuo let Jianqi go, focusing instead on uncovering the truth. However, before leaving, Jianqi had already given Mei Ying a mysterious drug, prompting Chen Zhuo to investigate its effects. With the help of Mingyu, Chen Zhuo discovered that the drug administered to Mei Ying was a memory suppressant. He then realized that this could be the reason Mei Ying had no recollection of witnessing his mother's death a year ago, where she was the sole eyewitness. After receiving an antidote, Mei Ying finally regained her lost memories. She revealed to Chen Zhuo that the person who had murdered his mother bore an uncanny resemblance to him. The truth was undeniable. It had been Chen Yu all along. Despite the shocking revelation, it was difficult to accept that his own brother would go so far as to kill their mother. However, when confronted, Chen Yu openly admitted to the crime. Overcome with rage, Chen Zhuo engaged in a brutal fight with his brother, leading to both of them plummeting into the sea. Following their fall, both brothers were hospitalized. However, during his recovery, Chen Zhuo suffered temporary memory loss. Seeing this as an opportunity, Chen Yu devised a sinister plan. He decided to impersonate his brother. By pretending to be Chen Zhuo, Chen Yu sought to take everything that belonged to him, including Mei Ying. To ensure his deception remained intact, Chen Yu instructed his assistant to continuously drug Chen Zhuo, preventing him from regaining his memories. Meanwhile, back home, Mei Ying began to sense something was off. Unlike the real Chen Zhuo, who was usually calm and composed, the man in front of her was prone to anger. This stark difference made her increasingly suspicious, as her deep connection with the real Chen Zhuo told her that something was wrong. The situation took an even more bewildering turn when, out of nowhere, another Chen Zhuo appeared, this time bearing the identity of Chen Yu. As a result, Mei Ying was utterly confused when there was suddenly two Chen Zhuo. At that moment, Chen Yu, who was masquerading as Chen Zhuo, was enraged by the presence of the real Chen Zhuo, who had now regained his identity. Their contrasting behaviors made it clear that something was amiss, and Mei Ying grew increasingly certain that the man she had been with was not the real Chen Zhuo. Not only Mei Ying, but others close to Chen Zhuo also began to take notice. Even Ming Yu grew suspicious, realizing that the Chen Zhuo standing before them acted nothing like the man he had always known. With the truth slowly unraveling, the masquerade that Chen Yu had so carefully crafted was beginning to crumble. On the other side, the real Chen Zhuo was fed terrifying stories about the crimes Chen Yu had committed, causing him to panic and sink into depression. Now trapped in the identity of Chen Yu, his demeanor began to change. He became irritable and prone to anger, just like the real Chen Yu. Fortunately, Chen Zhuo quickly realized that this was all part of Chen Yu's scheme to steal his identity. Determined not to fall into his brother's trap, he decided to turn the tables on him. First, Chen Zhuo sought Ming Yu's help to keep a constant watch over his beloved, Mei Ying, for 24 hours a day. He knew that the Chen Zhuo beside her was actually an imposter, Chen Yu in disguise. Then, just as the disguised Chen Yu was about to propose to Mei Ying, the real Chen Zhuo, still in the identity of Chen Yu, arrived with a woman named Mu Zi. Unexpectedly, Mu Zi was actually Chen Yu's lover. Seeing her presence, the fake Chen Zhuo panicked. This was precisely what the real Chen Zhuo had planned, to expose Chen Yu's deception and reclaim his rightful identity. Mei Ying gradually began to realize the truth. The man standing before her, showing genuine affection and care, was the real Chen Zhuo. It was later revealed that Mu Zi was the adopted daughter of the Chen family, and Lady Chen had decreed long ago that one of her grandsons must marry Mu Zi to inherit the family leadership. However, Chen Zhuo had always been different. He had no desire to marry Mu Zi. His heart belonged to Mei Ying, the woman he truly loved. Even if he were to become the head of the Chen family, he vowed to change the family's traditions so that future generations would not be forced to follow their parents' wishes against their own hearts. Despite this revelation, Mei Ying remained unsure of who the real Chen Zhuo was. She struggled to distinguish between the man who had been with her and the one whose actions reflected the true Chen Zhuo she had known. Regardless, whenever the disguised Chen Yu tried to win her affection, she refused him, unwilling to give her heart to someone she could not fully trust. To stay close to Mei Ying and protect her, the real Chen Zhuo, still under the identity of Chen Yu, took residence in her hotel. Meanwhile, the real Chen Yu, growing frustrated with his failed disguise, lashed out at his assistant for failing to keep the real Chen Zhuo under control. However, Mu Zi managed to calm him down with a kiss, taking advantage of his infatuation with her. At the hotel, Mei Ying finally confronted Chen Zhuo, revealing that she had figured out his ruse. She knew that he had been pretending to be Chen Yu to get revenge on the real Chen Yu for stealing his identity. Yet, Chen Zhuo said nothing, neither confirming nor denying her words. Back at home, Mei Ying stumbled upon a hidden memory card in Chen Yu's wallet. Before Chen Yu, now undisguised, could snatch it away, the real Chen Zhuo arrived just in time and fought him off. Together, Chen Zhuo and Mei Ying viewed the contents of the memory card, uncovering irrefutable evidence of Chen Yu's past crimes. A year ago, Chen Yu had murdered his own business partner. Worse yet, when their mother witnessed the crime, she was accidentally pushed off a cliff, leading to her tragic death. At the same time, Mei Ying had been present at the scene, making her the key witness to Chen Yu's heinous act. Now, Chen Yu and Chen Zhuo have returned to their true identities. Chen Zhuo is overjoyed to finally be reunited with his beloved Mei Ying, the woman he deeply loves. Mei Ying shares the same happiness, relieved to be with Chen Zhuo once again. However, their troubles are far from over. One night, while Mei Ying is fast asleep after exhausting herself from exercising, Chen Zhuo receives an urgent call from Ming Yu, who has been taken hostage by Chen Yu. Without hesitation, Chen Zhuo rushes to the scene, ready to confront his brother for their mother's murder. But just as he is about to strike, Mei Ying unexpectedly appears, stopping him in his tracks. It turns out that Mei Ying has been drugged by Chen Yu's assistant, causing her to lose all memories of Chen Zhuo. Taking advantage of her confusion, Chen Yu brainwashes Mei Ying into believing that he is actually Chen Zhuo. Realizing he is at a disadvantage, Chen Zhuo makes a strategic escape, but he is pursued by Chen Yu's men. Fortunately, he is rescued by Yu Huan, who helps him devise a plan to save Mei Ying from his brother. As expected, Yu Huan's intervention prevents Chun Yu from getting close to Mei Ying, as she insists on staying by Mei Ying's side that night, foiling Chun Yu's scheme. The next morning, during breakfast, Yu Huan gives Mei Ying a special watch with an emergency button. If she ever finds herself in danger, she only needs to press it, and Chen Zhuo will immediately come to her rescue. Meanwhile, Chen Zhuo, fed up with his brother's endless schemes, prepares for a counterattack. He teams up with Mu Zi to bring down Chun Yu, who has disgraced the Chun family by committing matricide. With concrete evidence of Chun Yu's crimes, provided by his own men, Chen Zhuo is now just one step away from either imprisoning his brother or eliminating him for good. The tides turn when Mei Ying, using her watch's emergency button, finally escapes another brainwashing attempt by Chun Yu. Soon, Chen Zhuo arrives just in time to save her once again. Unexpectedly, Jian Qi, feeling betrayed by Chun Yu, strikes him with a lamp, rendering him unconscious and sending him to the hospital. With this situation, Chen Zhuo and Mei Ying are able to reunite. However, unbeknownst to them, Chun Yu has already regained consciousness, but is merely pretending to be unconscious. Later, a heated debate erupts within the Chun family. As the rightful heir, Chen Zhuo is expected to marry Mu Zi instead of Mei Ying. However, he firmly refuses to comply with his grandmother's wishes, declaring that Mei Ying is the only woman he will ever marry. Enraged, Lady Chun and Mu Zi begin to sabotage Mei Ying's hotel. Fortunately, Mei Ying remains composed and successfully counters their attacks. At the perfect moment, Chen Zhuo proposes to Mei Ying in front of Yu Huan and Ming Yu, and she joyfully accepts. Yet, trouble arises once more as the Chun family continues to meddle in Mei Ying's business, led by none other than Lady Chun, who refuses to bless their union. However, their interference proves futile, only strengthening the bond between Chen Zhuo and Mei Ying. No matter the storm, their love remains unwavering. Mei Ying ultimately regains full control of her hotel. Not only that, Mu Zi finds herself powerless, as Mei Ying has the unwavering support of Chen Zhuo, the new head of the Chen family. Even Lady Chun is left with no choice but to accept the reality. Chen Zhuo now has full authority over the family's businesses, leaving her with no leverage to oppose him. As the head of Chen family, Chen Zhuo was truly an exemplary man. He was even pursued by 3 women, Mei Ying, Yu Huan, and Mu Zi. However, in the end, Chen Zhuo chose Mei Ying, the woman he deeply loved and who loved him just as much in return. One day, Chen Zhuo was taken aback by the heartbreaking news of his grandmother's passing. The funeral of Lady Chun was held, and as the rightful heir, Chen Zhuo was temporarily given the authority to lead the Chen family. During this time, Mei Ying found herself feeling jealous when she saw Mu Zi comforting the grieving Chen Zhuo. What she did not know was that this had all been carefully planned by Chen Zhuo and Mu Zi as their final move against Chun Yu. They had already realized that Chun Yu had recovered from his injuries and was now fully aware of their actions. Shortly after, during the official ceremony to appoint Chen Zhuo as the new head of the family, Chun Yu suddenly appeared and took Mei Ying hostage. However, this was precisely the trap that Chen Zhuo and Mu Zi had set. When a moment was right, Mu Zi swiftly struck, incapacitating Chun Yu with a stab. Though she had once loved him, Mu Zi could never be with a man who had the heart to kill his own mother. The story concluded with Chen Zhuo, Mei Ying, and all the hotel staff taking a group photo, celebrating their success in uncovering the truth behind the murder of Chen Zhuo's mother. Despite now being the wealthiest man and the head of the Chun family, Chen Zhuo chose to remain a security guard at Mei Ying's hotel, staying true to his humble beginnings. Moral lesson from the story: if you pretend to be a security guard, you might accidentally become the richest man in the country. Just make sure your evil brother doesn't steal your identity while you're at it. Also, never trust a soup from your mother-in-law. It might come with more than just flavor.